The new crime boss came to return a dead boy's photo, then his little brother asked one question. Rain had fallen over Harbor Point since midnight. Daniel Cross had taken control of the neighborhood only hours earlier, after its longtime boss was finally gone. He came to a hidden laundromat carrying one thing he had waited 3 years to return, a photograph of a teenage boy who died protecting his little brother. Daniel expected grief, maybe fear. He did not expect the child to recognize him. Daniel Cross had blood on the cuff of his black coat when he stepped through the back door of Marlowe Laundry. Not much. A dark smear near the wrist, half hidden by rainwater. Anyone else might have mistaken it for rust from the old metal stair rail outside. Daniel knew exactly what it was, and for the first time since leaving Victor Kane's townhouse before dawn, he wished he had changed clothes. The back room was warm enough to fog his glasses. 6 commercial washers rolled in steady circles behind a row of folding tables. Somewhere near the front, an old radio played a soft soul song through static. The air smelled like detergent, hot cotton, and the faint sweetness of dryer sheets. Nothing in the room belonged to the world Daniel had just come from. He stopped inside the doorway. A small boy stood on a wooden milk crate beside a laundry cart, hanging children's socks over a metal drying rack. He wore an oversized green apron that looked as though it had been washed 1,000 times. His sleeves were rolled to the elbows, and in one hand he held half of an orange hard candy. The boy turned when the door clicked shut. Daniel had faced men with guns without blinking. He had sat across from federal investigators and told them nothing. He had once spent 40 minutes in a freezing warehouse while Victor Kane decided whether to have him killed. But the sight of that child's face emptied every prepared sentence from his head. The same dark eyes. The same straight brows. The same stubborn little lift at the left corner of the mouth. Eli. For one impossible second, Daniel saw a 16-year-old kid leaning against a corner store freezer, laughing around a mouthful of sunflower seeds and asking why grown men always looked so miserable. Then the boy in front of him blinked, and the illusion broke. Daniel reached inside his coat. The child did not flinch. That somehow made it worse. Daniel's fingers closed around the photograph he had carried from Victor's safe. He had imagined this moment for 3 years. He would put the picture on the counter, tell whoever was there that it belonged to the Bennett family, and leave before anyone asked questions. He had not imagined a 6-year-old watching him with Eli's eyes. A draft slipped under the back door as Daniel pulled the photograph free. The old print caught the air before he could set it down. It spun once and landed face up near the boy's shoes. The child hopped off the milk crate. Daniel almost told him not to touch it. Instead, the boy bent down, picked up the picture carefully, and wiped a drop of water from the corner with his thumb. The photograph showed Eli Bennett at 15, grinning at the camera in a faded Harbor Point high hoodie. His hair was too long. One front tooth overlapped the other. He had one arm thrown around a younger Daniel, who had turned away at the last second as if refusing to be photographed could keep anyone from knowing they had once been friends. The boy looked from the photograph to Daniel. "Why do you have my brother's picture?" Daniel felt the room tilt. The question was quiet. There was no fear in it, only certainty. He had heard the phrase "my brother" in police reports. In whispered conversations. In the mouth of Eli's aunt when she came to identify the body. But hearing it from this child reached somewhere none of those things had reached. Daniel's throat tightened. "What's your name?" he asked. "Noah." Of course it was. Eli used to carry a crumpled school photograph of a toddler named Noah in his wallet. He showed it to people who had not asked. "My little brother," he'd say. Smartest kid in Baltimore. Kid had been 2 years old and mostly interested in plastic dinosaurs, but Eli spoke about him like he was already headed for medical school. Noah held the photograph against his chest. Eli said somebody would bring this back. Daniel stared at him. Outside, rain rattled against the narrow basement windows. "What did you say?" "My brother said a man in a black coat would bring his picture back someday." Noah studied Daniel's coat, then his face. "He said that man would be grumpy and probably wouldn't know what to say." Daniel almost laughed. Instead, something painful moved behind his ribs. "That sounds like him. He said the man would help me too." Daniel's hand curled at his side. "Help you with what?" Noah considered the question as if the answer should have been obvious. "Keep the bad guys away. And make them stop hurting the cats behind Mr. Singh's store." The gun under Daniel's coat suddenly felt unbearably heavy. 3 years earlier, Eli Bennett had died in the alley behind that same store. Daniel looked down at the boy, then at the photograph pressed to his apron. He thought of Victor Kane's last expression before the old man's 10-year grip on Harbor Point finally ended. He thought of the men who had raised glasses to Daniel before sunrise because power needed a new name. He thought of all the ways men like him promised to protect places they were also responsible for frightening. Slowly, Daniel took his hand out of his coat and let it hang empty at his side. He crouched so he and Noah were eye level. It exposed the scar that ran from behind Daniel's ear to the base of his neck, a pale hooked line Victor's men had given him the night Eli died. Daniel normally kept it hidden under high collars. Noah's gaze went to it. Daniel did not turn away. "Yeah," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "I'm the man he meant. I came to bring the picture back." Noah's small fingers tightened around the photo. "And the bad guys?" Daniel looked at the washer turning behind him. White shirts lifted and fell through soapy water, over and over, as though anything could become clean if you kept it moving long enough. "They won't bother you anymore." It was the first promise he had made in years that frightened him more than a threat. A voice came from the front of the laundromat. "Noah? Who are you talking to?" Daniel stood. A woman appeared through the plastic strip curtain separating the customer area from the workroom. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, with silver threaded through dark hair and a pencil tucked behind one ear. Her hands were red from hot water. The moment she saw Daniel, she stopped. Her gaze moved to the black coat. Then to Noah holding Eli's picture. Every trace of softness left her face. "Get behind me," she said. Noah frowned. "Aunt Rosa," he brought Eli back. The sentence hit all three of them differently. Rosa Bennett crossed the room in 3 quick steps and placed herself between Daniel and the boy. "He brought a photograph," she said. "That's all." Daniel recognized her from the funeral. She had been the woman in a navy dress who did not cry until the grave had been filled. She had taken Noah, then a toddler, from a relative's arms and held him so tightly the boy protested. Rosa recognized him too. Daniel Cross. Noah peered around her side. "You know him?" "I know what he does." Daniel did not correct her. Rosa's eyes dropped to his cuff. She saw the stain. She looked back at him. "You need to leave." "I will. Now." Daniel nodded once. Noah stepped around her before she could stop him. "Wait." Daniel paused at the door. The boy held out the photograph. "You're in it." Daniel looked at the younger version of himself standing beside Eli. "Yeah. Were you his friend?" The easy answer would have been yes. The true answer was harder. "I should have been a better one." Noah tilted his head. "He said you were his best grown-up friend." Rosa closed her eyes. Daniel felt as though someone had reached through his ribs and gripped his heart with a bare hand. "He said that?" "Uh-huh. He said you pretended you didn't like anybody." For the first time that morning, Daniel smiled. It was brief and tired, but real. "He talked too much." "He did," Noah agreed solemnly. Rosa put a hand on the child's shoulder. Daniel opened the door. Cold rain air rushed into the room. Before he stepped outside, Rosa spoke. "Whatever happened last night, don't bring it here." Daniel looked back. She did not ask whether the rumors were true. By morning, everyone in Harbor Point knew Victor Kane was dead and Daniel Cross was the man sitting in his chair. "I won't," Daniel said. Rosa's expression hardened. "Men like you always say that after it's already too late." He left without defending himself. The rain had softened by the time Daniel reached the alley. His driver waited at the corner in a black sedan, but Daniel did not move toward it. Instead, he stood beneath the laundromat's flickering security light and looked at the blood on his sleeve. 3 years ago, he had made Eli a promise too. He had failed that one. The memory came back with the smell of rain. Eli had been 16 when Daniel first noticed him, though noticed was too gentle a word for what happened. The kid had thrown a carton of eggs at one of Victor Kane's collectors. Daniel had been 28 and already 8 years into a life he told himself he had chosen because the alternatives were worse. He collected debts, settled disputes, stood behind Victor at meetings, and knew which doors in Harbor Point opened because people respected him and which opened because they were afraid not to. That afternoon, Daniel found Eli behind Marlowe Laundry with an empty egg carton in his hand. "You have a death wish?" Daniel asked. Eli shrugged. "Your guy kicked Mrs. Alvarez's grocery bag. So you threw eggs at him." 12 of them. Cage-free. She buys good eggs." Daniel stared at him. Eli stared back. "How old are you?" "Old enough to know he's a jerk." Daniel should have dragged him to Victor. Instead, he laughed. That decision changed everything. Eli was not part of the street crews. His mother had died when Noah was born, and his father disappeared not long after. Rosa, their mother's older sister, took both boys into the 2-bedroom apartment above the laundromat she managed for its elderly owner. Eli worked evenings folding clothes, delivered groceries on weekends, and saved money in a coffee can for community college. He wanted to become an electrician. "People always need electricity," he told Daniel once. "Even criminals. Especially criminals. See? Stable career." Daniel tried not to like him. That became impossible. Eli had the irritating moral confidence of someone young enough to believe every bad system could be fixed if enough people stopped pretending it was normal. He challenged Daniel constantly. Why did shop owners have to pay Victor for protection from problems Victor's own people created? Why did Daniel call teenagers kids while letting older men recruit them to run packages? Why did everyone say Harbor Point was dangerous as if danger were weather instead of something people chose to make? Daniel never gave him satisfactory answers. Sometimes he told Eli to mind his business. Sometimes he bought the kid a cheeseburger and changed the subject. Sometimes, late at night, he went home to his empty apartment and realized he had no answer because Eli was right. The photograph Noah now held had been taken during one of those afternoons. Eli had insisted they get a picture because, in his words, "Nobody's going to believe the neighborhood's scariest man once bought me a milkshake." Daniel had tried to turn away. Eli caught him anyway. 2 months before his death, Eli came to Daniel with a problem. Victor's nephew, Mason Kane, had started using the alley near the laundromat as a hangout. Mason was 19, spoiled, reckless, and protected by his last name. He frightened customers for fun. He threw bottles at stray cats. He once shoved Noah's stroller out of his way hard enough that it rolled into a parking meter. Eli punched him. Daniel heard about it within an hour. He found Eli on the laundromat roof, sitting beside a rusted vent with a split knuckle. "Tell me you didn't hit Victor Kane's nephew." "Okay. I didn't hit Victor Kane's nephew." "Eli. You told me to tell you." Daniel sat beside him. You cannot keep doing this. Doing what? Acting like being right makes you bulletproof. The joke disappeared from Eli's face. He shoved Noah. I know. Then do something. Daniel looked toward the harbor, where cranes stood against a gray sky. I will handle Mason. How? Tell him to be nicer? You don't need to know. That's what you always say. Daniel turned to him. Because knowing gets people hurt. Eli's jaw tightened. Not knowing gets people hurt too. Daniel remembered that sentence for years. He tried to control the problem without challenging Victor directly. Mason was sent away for a few weeks on fake business. Daniel warned him privately to stay away from the Bennetts. Mason laughed. That laundry kid your little charity project now? Daniel stepped close enough that Mason stopped laughing. Stay away from him. Or what? Daniel should have answered that question honestly. He did not. He was still afraid of the line he would have to cross if he admitted he cared more about one teenage boy than Victor Kane's rules. That hesitation cost Eli his life. The night it happened, Daniel was across town settling a dispute for Victor. Rosa had closed the laundromat early because Noah had a fever. Eli ran to a pharmacy 3 blocks away for children's medicine. He never made it home. Mason and 2 friends found him in the alley behind Mr. Singh's store. No one ever gave Daniel a clean account of how it began. There were witnesses, but Harbor Point had learned not to see certain things. Daniel pieced it together later from fragments. Mason taunted Eli about the earlier punch. Eli tried to walk away. One of the others grabbed him. A stray cat darted from behind a dumpster and Noah, who had slipped out of Rosa's apartment looking for his brother, appeared at the mouth of the alley. That changed everything. Eli broke free and ran toward Noah. Mason followed. By the time Daniel arrived, Eli was on the pavement. Noah was screaming. Daniel remembered the rainwater carrying red toward the storm drain. He remembered dropping to his knees. He remembered Eli grabbing the front of his coat with fingers that could barely close. Noah, Eli whispered. Rosa has him, Daniel lied, because somebody had already pulled the child away and Daniel needed Eli to believe he was safe. Don't let them make him scared of everything. They won't. Picture. Daniel did not understand. Eli coughed and tried again. Victor's safe. Mason took it. He said he'd keep it like a trophy. Get it back. Daniel's vision blurred. You can tell me yourself tomorrow. Eli gave him the faintest version of his crooked grin. You're terrible at lying. Then he said something Daniel did not tell anyone for 3 years. When you finally stop being scared of Victor, take it to Noah. He'll know you. Daniel had gripped his shoulder. I'm not scared of Victor. Sure. Even dying, the kid was impossible. Tell Noah the black coat guy will look out for him, Eli whispered. He'll remember. I told him stories. Eli. And the cats. What? Don't let Mason hurt the cats. Noah hates that. Daniel bowed his head. Okay. Eli's fingers loosened on his coat. Daniel spent the next 3 years pretending that Promise had not split his life into before and after. Victor protected Mason. The official story became a random street assault. Mason disappeared from the neighborhood for months. Witnesses changed their statements. The detective assigned to the case stopped returning Rosa's calls. Daniel nearly killed Mason the next morning. Victor stopped him. Not with force. With a sentence. You touch my blood over some laundry kid, Victor said, and everyone connected to that kid becomes part of the problem. Rosa. Noah. Mr. Singh. Anyone who had spoken to police. Daniel stood in Victor's study and understood, finally, the full architecture of fear. Victor did not need to threaten people directly. He only needed Daniel to believe that loving anything created a target. So Daniel stepped back. And hated himself for it. He did not abandon the Bennetts completely. Rent on the apartment above the laundromat stopped increasing. The owner received anonymous payments for repairs. When Noah developed asthma, a medical bill vanished through a charity fund Daniel quietly financed. Rosa suspected. She never thanked him. He never asked her to. Meanwhile, Daniel waited. He became more useful to Victor, not less. He took meetings. He learned the older man's accounts, alliances, resentments, and habits. He became the person Victor trusted to clean up problems without understanding that Daniel was slowly learning how to remove him without letting the whole neighborhood collapse into chaos. Daniel told himself it was revenge. Some nights that was true. Other nights, he remembered Eli asking why people acted as if danger were weather. Then he wondered what it would mean to change the forecast. By the third anniversary of Eli's death, Victor Kane was old, suspicious, and losing control. Mason had grown into a crueler version of the boy he had been. Younger crews were testing boundaries. Shop owners were paying twice, once to Victor's people and once to independent thieves Victor could no longer control. Daniel knew if Victor simply disappeared, Harbor Point would tear itself apart. So he spent months making agreements with people who hated each other but hated instability more. No retaliation against families. No recruitment near schools. No threats to local businesses. No fighting on residential blocks. The men who listened believed Daniel was preparing to take Victor's throne. They were only partly right. The confrontation came in Victor's townhouse on a stormy Thursday night. There was no grand speech. No audience. Daniel had imagined one for years and discovered, when the moment arrived, that he was too tired for theater. Victor sat behind the same desk where he had once threatened the Bennett family. The old man looked at Daniel and understood before anyone spoke. "This is about that boy," he said. Daniel's expression did not change. Victor laughed softly. 3 years and you're still carrying a dead teenager around in your head. You should have given Mason up. For hitting some nobody? Daniel's hands went still. Victor saw it and smiled. There it is. What happened after that traveled through Harbor Point in 10 different versions by sunrise. In some, Daniel shot Victor across the desk. In others, Victor reached first. One rumor claimed half the neighborhood had been involved. Only Daniel knew the truth, and he had no interest in correcting anyone. Victor Kane did not leave the townhouse alive. Mason fled the city before dawn. In Victor's safe, behind property records and cash, Daniel found the photograph. Eli and Daniel at the corner store, frozen in a summer afternoon before either of them knew how little time was left. Daniel sat in Victor's chair with the picture in his hand until the sky turned gray. Then he went to Marlowe Laundry. Now, standing in the rain after meeting Noah, Daniel understood something that revenge had not prepared him for. Victor was gone. The promise remained. And promises to the dead had a way of becoming obligations to the living. Daniel returned to Victor's old social club that afternoon and found 12 men waiting for him. The room smelled like stale coffee, cigar smoke, and suspicion. Men who had spent years pretending loyalty to Victor now watched Daniel with the cautious attention people gave a new dog they had been told might bite. Rafael Ortiz sat nearest the window. He had known Daniel since they were teenagers. Unlike most of the others, he did not look impressed. "You look terrible," Rafael said. "Good morning to you too. It's 2 in the afternoon." Daniel dropped his wet coat over the back of a chair. One of the older men, Frank Delaney, cleared his throat. "We should settle the routes before word gets around that Kane's gone." Words already around, Raphael said. Then faster. Daniel looked around the table. This was the moment they expected. New boss, new percentages, new punishments. The same machine under different management. He thought of Noah asking about the cats. We're closing 3 routes, Daniel said. Silence. Frank frowned. Which 3? The school corridor, the clinic blocks, and every collection account from locally owned businesses on Harbor Avenue. Someone laughed, then realized Daniel was not joking. You mean lowering the numbers? Frank asked. I mean ending them. That's half the cash flow. Not anymore. Frank leaned back. Cain wouldn't have agreed. Cain's dead. The room went quiet again. Daniel did not raise his voice. If a store owner wants security cameras, we can connect them to a legitimate vendor. If somebody's window gets broken, nobody sends a collector to charge them for the privilege of not breaking the next one. We are done manufacturing problems and calling the solution protection. One man muttered, so what are we now, neighborhood watch? Daniel met his eyes. We're whatever keeps federal agents from turning this block into a parking lot full of evidence vans. You want the practical answer? Move money into the businesses that can survive daylight. Construction. Warehouses. Delivery contracts. Property rehab. You want the other answer? I'm tired of old women being afraid of us. No one had expected that. Raphael's mouth twitched. Frank did not smile. And if the younger crews see that as weakness? Then they see it once. Daniel's tone made the rest unnecessary. He was not suddenly a good man. He knew that. He had spent too many years doing things he could not erase. A change in policy did not wash his hands clean. But he could stop making new stains. Over the next week, Harper Point became unsettled by the absence of things. No one came into Mr. Singh's store asking for an envelope. The men who usually occupied the bus stop near Harbour Point Middle vanished. A group that had been harassing delivery drivers outside the pharmacy found their stolen scooters impounded and 2 older cousins explaining, in urgent terms, that the block was now off-limits. Rumors spread faster than explanations. Some said Daniel Cross had gone soft. Others said he had become more dangerous because he no longer needed money from small people. Rosa Bennett believed neither version. She believed Daniel wanted something. 3 days after his visit, he returned to the laundromat carrying no weapon that she could see and a cardboard box from a bakery. Rosa met him at the front counter. No. Daniel set the box down. I haven't said anything. You came through the door. That was enough. A customer folding towels glanced over. Daniel lowered his voice. Noah left his candy wrapper in my coat pocket. Rosa stared at him. How? I don't know. He's talented. From behind a row of dryers came a delighted yell. Mr. Black Coat. Noah ran toward him. Rosa closed her eyes for 1 second as if asking heaven for patience. Daniel crouched and held out the tiny orange wrapper. Evidence. Noah accepted it seriously. I thought I lost that. Clearly. Did you bring donuts? Daniel glanced at Rosa. I was hoping that might improve negotiations. It won't. Can I have one? Noah asked. Rosa pointed at him. Half. After lunch. Noah disappeared toward the back room with the speed of someone who had already decided half was negotiable. Rosa looked at Daniel. What do you want? To make sure Mason doesn't come back here. Her face changed. Is he alive? Yes. Do you know where he is? Not exactly. Then your promise to Noah was premature. Daniel accepted the hit. Probably. Rosa folded her arms. 3 years ago, my nephew died. Everyone knew who did it. Nobody did anything. Police stopped calling. Witnesses forgot what they saw. People told me to move. As if the answer to someone murdering a child was for the family to disappear quietly. Daniel looked at the counter. I know. No. You know from the other side of it. He looked up. Rosa's eyes were bright but dry. You people always talk about loyalty. Family. Respect. Then a 16-year-old is dead on pavement and suddenly every grown man has a reason he couldn't help. Daniel did not defend himself. You're right. That interrupted her anger more effectively than an argument would have. I was afraid of what Victor would do to you and Noah, Daniel said. That was true. It was also convenient. I could tell myself staying close to him was strategic. I could tell myself I was waiting for the right time. Eli didn't get a right time. Rosa's jaw tightened. He trusted you. I know. I hated you for that. Daniel nodded. I know that too. No, you don't. I hated that he saw something in you. Because after he died, every time I looked at you, I wondered if maybe he had been wrong about people. Daniel had no answer. Noah's voice came from the back. Aunt Rosa. Is half a donut the left half or the right half? Rosa shut her eyes. Daniel looked down to hide a smile. Don't encourage him, she said. I didn't say anything. Your face did. For the first time, the corner of her mouth moved. It was not forgiveness. It was barely even peace. But it was a crack in the wall. Daniel returned to the laundromat the next Saturday, then the Saturday after that. He always brought a practical excuse. The back door needed a new deadbolt. The alley light was broken. The dryer vent inspection was overdue. Rosa accepted exactly one of those explanations without comment. Noah accepted all of them enthusiastically. He had decided Daniel belonged to a category of adult he had invented for himself, dangerous-looking but useful. Can you fix a bike? Noah asked one morning. Daniel was tightening a loose hinge on the laundromat door. Depends what's wrong with it. It doesn't go. That's not a diagnosis. Noah dragged a small blue bicycle from behind the folding table. The chain hung loose. Daniel stared at it. Your brother used to do the same thing. Break bikes? Describe problems badly. Noah crouched beside him while he reset the chain. Did Eli know how to fight? Daniel's hands paused. Children did that. They walked through doors adults spent years avoiding. He thought he did. Was he strong? Very. Stronger than you? Daniel considered. In some ways. Noah seemed satisfied. Aunt Rosa says strong doesn't mean hitting. She's right. Then why do people say you hurt people? Daniel's finger slipped on the chain. Across the room, Rosa stopped folding his sheet. Daniel could have lied. Instead, he wiped grease onto a rag. Because I have. Noah studied him with unnerving seriousness. Bad people? Daniel's first instinct was to say yes. Then he remembered Eli. Sometimes. Sometimes people I told myself were bad because it made things easier. Are you bad? Rosa took a step forward. Daniel shook his head slightly, telling her he could handle it. He looked at Noah. I've done bad things. That's not exactly the same question. What question is it? Whether you keep doing them after you know better. Noah thought about this. Then he pointed at the bicycle. Does it go now? Daniel laughed. Yes. The boy rode it in circles around the folding tables until Rosa threatened to confiscate it. That night, Daniel sat alone in Victor Kane's former office and realized a 6-year-old had asked him the most difficult question anyone ever had. Was he bad? Men in Daniel's world avoided that kind of language. They talked about necessity, business, survival, respect. Bad was for children's stories. Maybe that was why children saw things more clearly. The trouble with changing rules was that people who benefited from the old ones rarely thanked you. Within a month, Frank Delaney began complaining that Daniel's restrictions were costing everyone money. A younger crew from Westbridge started testing Harbor Point, selling near the high school and claiming Daniel no longer had the stomach to stop them. Raphael brought the news late one evening. They're laughing at the no-school zone rule. Daniel looked up from a stack of paperwork for a legitimate warehouse company he was trying to purchase. Who's leading them? Kid called Terrence Boone. 22. Thinks he's immortal. Everyone's immortal at 22. You weren't. I was worse. I thought I deserved to die, which makes a person very inconvenient. Raphael sat down. Frank's talking to them. Daniel's expression changed. You sure? Sure enough to tell you. Frank had served Victor for 20 years. He believed fear was the only currency that held a neighborhood together. If he thought Daniel was dismantling the old structure, he might prefer someone younger and easier to control. What do you want to do? Raphael asked. Daniel stared at the warehouse contract. 3 years earlier, his answer would have been immediate and violent. Now he thought of Noah asking whether strength meant hitting. We make them visible. Raphael frowned. That's not the answer I expected. Good. Daniel arranged for security footage of the Westbridge crew dealing near the school to reach the right detective anonymously. He tipped off a property owner about an illegal stash location and made sure the landlord cleared the building before police arrived. He leaned on 2 older men who supplied Boone and persuaded them that losing legitimate trucking contracts over a 22-year-old's ego was bad business. Within 10 days, Boone's crew collapsed without a body in the street. Raphael watched the process with amusement. You know what this is called? What? Administration. Don't insult me. You killed a crime wave with paperwork. Eli would have loved this. Daniel's face went still. Raphael looked away. Sorry. No. He would have. The harder problem was Mason. He returned to Baltimore in late April. Daniel learned about it from a woman who worked nights at a hotel near the airport. Mason had checked in under another name, paid cash, and asked questions about Harbor Point. Daniel's first thought was not revenge. It was Noah. That frightened him more than rage would have. He called Rosa immediately. She answered on the 4th ring. What? Close early tonight. Silence. Why? Mason's back. Another silence, this one much longer. Are you sure? Yes. Rosa's breathing changed. Daniel heard a washer buzzer in the background. Noah is at school until 3, she said. I'll have someone nearby. No. Rosa. I said no. I will not have armed men following him around. They won't be armed near the school. That is not reassuring. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Then let me pick him up. Absolutely not. You're making this difficult. Good. Maybe you'll remember I'm his guardian. He stopped. She was right. Again. What do you want? He asked. Her voice softened by 1 degree. I want the police to know Mason is back. I want you to stay away from him. And I want Noah to have one normal afternoon where adults don't turn his life into a battlefield. Daniel stared through the office window at the street below. The police had 3 years. Then give them another chance. Rosa. If you kill him, Eli does not come back. Daniel said nothing. And if Noah grows up believing every promise is kept with a gun, then something else dies too. That sentence followed him for the rest of the day. Daniel sent everything he had on Mason to a detective named Lena Brooks, who had recently taken over the cold case review unit. Unlike the original investigator, Brooks called Rosa within an hour. There was enough new evidence to reopen the case, but not enough for an arrest. Mason, meanwhile, made his intention clear. That night, someone threw a brick through Marlowe Laundry's front window. No one was hurt. Taped to the brick was a photograph of Eli's grave. Daniel arrived before the glass had finished settling. Rosa stood behind the counter with Noah upstairs and a broom in her hands. When Daniel saw the photograph, something old and black opened inside him. "Where is he?" he asked Raphael. "Daniel." "Where?" Raphael stepped in front of him. "Think." Daniel grabbed his jacket. "Move. This is what Mason wants. Move." Rosa's voice cut through the room. "Daniel." He turned. She was shaking. He had never seen her shake before. "If you walk out that door to kill him," she said, "do not come back and tell Noah you did it for Eli." Daniel froze. "Don't you dare put that on my nephew." The broom slipped slightly in her hand. Eli spent 16 years trying to protect that child from becoming afraid. You want to honor him? Then don't teach Noah that the only safe man is the one willing to become worse than everybody else. Daniel's chest rose and fell. The room seemed too bright. Behind Rosa, the broken window opened onto rain-dark pavement. Slowly, Daniel let go of his jacket. "What do you suggest?" Rosa blinked as if she had not expected him to ask. "We use the law you all spent years convincing people was useless." Raphael let out a quiet breath. Detective Brooks arrived 20 minutes later. The brick, tape, and photograph were collected as evidence. Nearby camera footage showed a car connected to one of Mason's friends. A partial print came off the plastic covering the grave photo. It was not enough by itself. But Mason had made a mistake. He thought Rosa would be too frightened to talk. He had forgotten that fear and silence were not the same thing. Rosa gave a statement about the threats that followed Eli's death. Mr. Singh agreed to speak for the first time. A former employee of Victor's, now living in Delaware, admitted he had been ordered to pressure a witness 3 years earlier. Then Daniel did something no one expected. He met Detective Brooks in a conference room at police headquarters without an attorney. "I can give you Mason," he said. Brooks studied him. "At what cost?" "Mine." "That's not an answer." Daniel folded his hands on the table. "I can tell you where he was the night Eli died, who moved him afterward, which vehicles were used, who paid the witness, and where Victor kept records. Some of that puts me in rooms I should not have been in." Brooks stared at him for a long moment. "Why now?" Daniel thought of a boy holding an orange candy. "Because a 6-year-old asked me if I'm bad." Brooks' eyebrows lifted. "That's a new one." "I didn't like not knowing the answer." She leaned back. "You understand cooperation doesn't erase your own exposure." "Yes." "And you understand I am not promising you immunity." "I'm not asking." For 3 hours, Daniel talked. Not about everything. He was not transformed into a saint by one conversation, and there were still people he would not betray. But he gave Brooks the structure around Eli's case. Enough to turn rumors into evidence. 2 days later, Mason Kane was arrested leaving the hotel. The news spread through Harbor Point before Daniel heard it officially. Noah heard too. He was sitting at a table in the laundromat doing math homework when Daniel came in. "Aunt Rosa says the bad man got caught," Noah said. Daniel took off his coat. "Yeah. Did you catch him?" Daniel looked at Rosa. She watched him carefully. A lot of people helped, he said. Mostly people who finally told the truth. Did you hit him? No. Noah seemed surprised. Did you want to? Daniel almost smiled. Very much. But you didn't? No. Noah nodded, satisfied. Good. Aunt Rosa says strong doesn't mean hitting. Daniel looked at Rosa. I've heard. She turned away, but he saw the beginning of a smile. The arrest did not end everything. Real life rarely respected clean endings. Mason's attorney attacked the witnesses. Old loyalties cracked. Daniel's cooperation made him enemies among men who believed he had violated a code that had protected them for years. Frank Delaney disappeared from Harbor Point and resurfaced with a crew outside the city. Twice, cars followed Daniel home. Once, someone fired at the front of a warehouse he owned after hours. No one was injured. Still, Daniel understood the message. Change had a cost. The difference was that he no longer intended to make other people pay it for him. He moved out of Victor's townhouse and refused to use the old social club as headquarters. He sold 2 properties tied to gambling operations and put the money into a legitimate redevelopment company with Raphael, who complained daily about having to learn payroll taxes. Organized crime had less paperwork, Raphael said. It also had more funerals. The forms are close. They bought an abandoned row of storefronts on Harbor Avenue and renovated them into small commercial spaces with capped rents for local businesses. Mr. Singh expanded his grocery store. A woman named Carla opened a daycare. A former line cook started a breakfast place where Daniel could never get a table because everyone else in the neighborhood loved it too. The laundromat changed more slowly. Rosa resisted every offer Daniel made. The dryers work. 2 of them make noises that sound medically concerning. They have personality. The roof leaks. Only when it rains sideways. It rained sideways yesterday. And we survived. Eventually Daniel discovered the building's elderly owner wanted to sell. He bought it through a transparent company and had the deed transferred into a community trust that guaranteed Rosa a lifetime lease and prevented luxury development. When she found out, she marched into his office carrying the paperwork. You bought my building. Daniel looked up from his desk. Technically, the trust bought it. You funded the trust. Technically. Stop saying technically. He leaned back. What are you angry about? You don't get to fix guilt with real estate. I know. That stopped her. Daniel stood. I'm not trying to buy forgiveness. I don't think I get to decide whether I deserve it. The building was going to a developer. They wanted to double the commercial rents and clear the upstairs apartments. I could stop that, so I did. Rosa searched his face. And what do you get? A laundromat with medically concerning dryers. She tried not to laugh. Failed. It was the first time Daniel heard the sound. Noah's 7th birthday came in June. He wanted exactly 3 things: a chocolate cake, a red bicycle helmet, and a party where nobody acts weird because Eli is dead. Rosa told Daniel that last request in a quiet voice. He hates when adults whisper around him. Then we don't whisper. The party took place in the small courtyard behind the laundromat. Children chased bubbles between folding chairs. Mr. Singh brought samosas. Raphael arrived with a remote-controlled car that was far too expensive and immediately crashed it into a flower pot. Daniel stood near the fence, uncertain where to put his hands. Parties had never been his strength. Noah ran over wearing his new helmet even though the bicycle was still leaning against the wall. Come see. He dragged Daniel inside the laundromat. On one wall near the back, Rosa had hung a framed copy of Eli's photograph. Not the one from Victor's safe. A cleaned, enlarged copy. Daniel was still visible at the edge of the frame, looking away. Beneath it, Noah had taped a drawing. It showed 4 stick figures: Noah, Rosa, Eli with wings he insisted were not angel wings, just flying equipment, and Daniel in a black coat. Above them, in uneven blue marker, he had written, "People who keep watch." Daniel stared at it too long. Noah tugged his sleeve. "Do you like it?" Daniel cleared his throat. "Yeah. You look sad." "I'm not." "You're terrible at lying." Daniel closed his eyes. The exact phrase. He crouched beside Noah. "Your brother used to say that." "I know." "How?" Noah grinned. "He told me." Daniel laughed, but his eyes burned. Later that afternoon, Rosa found him alone in the alley behind the laundromat. The rain had stopped weeks ago, and summer light lay gold across the brick walls. A gray stray cat slept on the hood of an abandoned car. "That one used to run from everyone," Rosa said. Daniel looked at the cat. "Noah feeds it." "Of course he does." Rosa stood beside him. For a while, neither spoke. Then she said, "Eli knew." Daniel turned. "Knew what?" "That you were trying to protect him, even when you were doing a terrible job of it." Daniel looked away. "That's generous." Eli was generous. "Not stupid." Rosa folded her arms. "A week before he died, he told me if anything ever happened to him, I shouldn't blame the man in the black coat." Daniel's breath stopped. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I did blame you." He nodded. "Fair." "And because I was angry at him for protecting you from me." Daniel stared at the pavement. Rosa's voice softened. "But he also said you'd eventually do the right thing, mostly because you'd run out of excuses." Daniel laughed once, without humor. "That sounds exactly like him." "He had your number." "Everyone did except me." Rosa reached into her apron pocket and held out a folded piece of paper. "I found this in one of his old school notebooks last month." Daniel did not take it immediately. "What is it?" "Something he wrote. Probably for an English assignment." The teacher asked them to write about a person they misunderstood. Daniel unfolded the paper. Eli's handwriting slanted hard to the right. The essay was only 1 page. He had written about Daniel. Not by name. He called him "a guy from my neighborhood who looks like he belongs in a movie where everyone makes bad decisions." Daniel almost smiled. Eli wrote that when they first met, he thought Daniel was just another bully in an expensive coat. Then he realized Daniel always stood between crueler men and people who could not fight back, but pretended it was business so nobody would know he cared. The final paragraph was underlined twice. "Some people think being good is about never getting dirty. I think maybe it's also about what you do after you realize you're already dirty. Do you spread it around because you don't want to feel different, or do you finally wash your hands and help somebody else stay clean?" Daniel read the last sentence 3 times. When he looked up, Rosa was watching him. "He was 16, Daniel said." "Annoying, wasn't he?" "Extremely." Rosa smiled. Daniel folded the paper carefully. "Can I keep this?" "That's why I gave it to you." He put it inside his coat, over his heart. Mason Kane's trial began that fall. Daniel testified on the second day. The courthouse hallway was crowded with reporters because people loved stories about criminal empires collapsing, especially when they could tell them without discussing the ordinary families who had lived under those empires for years. Daniel hated every camera. Rosa and Noah sat in the back row of the courtroom. Noah was only allowed in for part of the proceedings and spent most of the morning drawing in a notebook. On the stand, Daniel answered questions about Victor, Mason, intimidation, and the night Eli died. The defense attorney tried to destroy his credibility. Mr. Cross, you've admitted to years of criminal conduct, correct? Yes. You benefited financially from Victor Kane's organization? Yes. You used violence? Yes. And now we're supposed to believe you've suddenly become a reliable citizen? Daniel looked at the jury. No. The attorney paused. No? You're supposed to believe the evidence. Whether you like me is irrelevant. A few jurors shifted. The attorney frowned. You hated Mason Kane. Yes. You wanted revenge. Yes. You still do? Daniel looked toward the back row. Noah was watching him. No, Daniel said. The attorney raised an eyebrow. Why not? Daniel took a breath. Because revenge is too small. I want the truth on the record. Rosa lowered her eyes. The jury convicted Mason of manslaughter, witness intimidation, and related offenses tied to the cover-up. It was not the murder conviction Rosa had once imagined. It was not a sentence equal to Eli's life, because no sentence could be. But Mason was led away in handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions at Daniel. He ignored them. Noah slipped his hand into Daniel's. Daniel looked down, startled. The child had never done that before. You did good, Noah said. Daniel swallowed. Your aunt did most of it. She says that too. Rosa walked on Noah's other side. Don't get used to compliments, she told Daniel. I wasn't planning to. Winter returned to Harbor Point almost exactly 1 year after Victor Kane's death. The anniversary made Daniel restless. He woke before dawn, drove alone to the cemetery, and stood in front of Eli Bennett's grave while thin snow gathered on his shoulders. He brought no whiskey. Eli had been 16, and Daniel could almost hear him objecting to the symbolism. Instead, Daniel brought a paper cup of terrible gas station hot chocolate, because Eli had loved it. He set it beside the headstone. Your taste was awful, he said. Snow landed silently on the grass. Daniel shoved his hands into his coat pockets. I got the picture back. Took me too long. He looked at Eli's name carved into stone. Noah's 7 now. He talks as much as you did, which feels unfair. Rosa still thinks I'm an idiot. She's usually right. Wind moved through the bare trees. Daniel looked down. I thought killing Victor would be the thing. The finish line. I thought I'd do that and maybe everything in my head would get quiet. He laughed softly. You probably knew better. For a long time, he said nothing. Then footsteps crunched behind him. Daniel turned. Rosa and Noah were walking up the path. Noah carried a small orange pinwheel. You started without us, he called. Didn't know we had an appointment. We do every year now. I decided. Rosa gave Daniel a look over Noah's head that said arguing was pointless. Noah planted the pinwheel beside the grave. Orange was Eli's favorite. Daniel blinked. I thought it was blue. No. Orange. He told me blue. Rosa sighed. He changed his favorite color every 6 months. Daniel shook his head. Untrustworthy to the end. Noah giggled. They stood together in the cold. After a while, Noah looked up at Daniel. Are there still bad guys? Daniel considered the question. Yes. Are you going to get rid of all of them? Rosa glanced at him. Daniel crouched. No. I don't think anybody can do that. Noah looked disappointed. Then what did you promise me? Daniel smiled faintly. I promised nobody was going to make you feel like being scared was the price of living in your own neighborhood. That's different. How? It means we make it harder for bad people to run everything. We tell the truth. We help people who need it. We fix lights. We call the police when we're supposed to. We don't let kids get recruited because adults are too busy looking away. And sometimes we rescue cats. Noah nodded at the last part. That's important. Apparently. Rosa smiled. Daniel stood. The three of them began walking back toward the parking lot. Halfway down the path, Noah tugged Daniel's sleeve. Do you still have a gun? Rosa looked sharply at him. Daniel did not lie. Yes. Why? He thought carefully. Because changing doesn't happen all at once. And because I still have people who might hurt me. Noah frowned. Are you scared? Daniel looked at the child. 3 years earlier, he would have denied it automatically. Sometimes. Eli said you were. Daniel groaned. Did your brother tell you every embarrassing thing about me? Probably. Rosa laughed. By spring, Harbor Point looked almost the same from a distance. The same brick row houses. The same narrow alleys. The same old laundromat sign with 2 letters that flickered when it rained. The neighborhood had not transformed into a postcard because one violent man died and another decided to change course. There were still overdoses. Still arguments. Still teenagers who thought they were invincible. Still landlords who neglected buildings and politicians who remembered Harbor Point mostly during election years. But ordinary things had shifted. The streetlights near the school worked. Store owners no longer kept envelopes under the register. The daycare stayed open late for hospital workers. The breakfast place hired 3 teenagers for summer jobs. Raphael's warehouse company won a city delivery contract so legitimate that he framed the first tax notice as a joke. And behind Mr. Singh's grocery store, someone built a small weatherproof shelter for stray cats. Noah painted it orange. Daniel pretended not to know who paid for the lumber. One rainy evening, almost 18 months after he first returned Eli's photograph, Daniel stepped through the laundromat's back door again. He wore a black coat. This one was clean. Noah, now 8, stood on the same wooden milk crate folding towels badly. You're late, he said. For what? Dinner. Daniel checked his watch. Nobody told me dinner had a time. Aunt Rosa did. You don't listen. Also sounds like your brother. Rosa appeared from the front carrying a takeout bag. Stop blaming a dead teenager for your personality. Daniel took the bag from her. What did you get? Chicken. Rice. Vegetables you'll both pretend not to see. Noah made a face. They ate at the folding table while washers turned around them. After dinner, Noah worked on a school assignment titled People Who Changed My Neighborhood. Daniel noticed his name on the page and immediately pointed at it. No. Noah looked up. What? Pick somebody else. Why? Because I'm not doing an interview. You have to. I absolutely do not. Rosa sipped coffee. He has to. Daniel looked betrayed. Noah lifted his pencil. Question 1. What was Harbor Point like when you were a kid? Daniel leaned back. Complicated. That's not enough words. Dangerous. Still not enough. Daniel looked to Rosa for help. She smiled sweetly. Answer the child. He sighed. Fine. When I was a kid, people here were loyal to the block because sometimes the block was all they had. That could be good. Everybody knew whose grandmother needed groceries. Everybody watched everybody else's children. But people also got used to men solving problems with fear. After a while, we stopped asking whether that was normal because it had always been there. Noah wrote quickly. Question 2. What changed it? Daniel looked at the framed photograph on the wall. Eli still grinned from the summer afternoon. A kid annoyed me, Daniel said. Noah stopped writing. That's my answer? Pretty much. Rosa laughed. He kept asking questions I didn't want to answer, Daniel continued. He thought adults were cowards when they pretended nothing could change. He was rude about it. Eli was not rude. Both adults looked at Noah. He was extremely rude, Rosa said. Daniel nodded. Professionally rude. Noah crossed out something on the page. I'm not writing that. History deserves accuracy. The boy ignored him. Question 3. What are you proud of? Daniel's smile faded. He thought of everything he could not undo. Then he looked around the laundromat. Noah's backpack hung from a chair. Rosa's reading glasses rested beside the register. A woman near the front laughed into her phone while folding baby clothes. Rain tapped against intact windows. I'm proud people don't lower their voices when I walk in anymore. Noah stared at him. That's weird. You asked. Rosa did not say anything. But her eyes softened. Last question, Noah said. What do you want Harbor Point to be when I'm grown up? Daniel looked at him. There it was again. A child asking a question adults could spend entire lives avoiding. He answered slowly. Boring. Noah frowned. Boring? Safely boring. I want you to complain about rent and traffic and your boss. I want the biggest scandal on this block to be that Mr. Singh parks in the loading zone. I want you to walk home at night without knowing which corners belong to which men. I want you to choose where you live because you like it, not because you're trapped here or running from it. Noah stopped writing. That's a lot. You wanted enough words. Rosa smiled into her coffee. Later, after Noah went upstairs to finish homework, Daniel helped Rosa close the laundromat. He locked the back door, checked the windows, and turned off the row of fluorescent lights until only the warm lamp above the folding counter remained. Rosa stood beside the framed photograph. You know he would have hated being turned into a saint, she said. Daniel looked at Eli's grin. He would have charged admission to the memorial. Absolutely. They stood there a moment. Do you ever wish you could tell him? Rosa asked. Tell him what? That you finally did what he asked. Daniel considered. Sometimes. What would he say? Daniel looked toward the ceiling, where Noah's footsteps moved across the apartment above them. A smile pulled at his mouth. He'd say I took long enough. Rosa nodded. That's exactly what he'd say. Daniel turned off the last lamp. They stepped out the back door together. The alley was wet from rain, but the storm had passed. Streetlights cast clean circles across the pavement. The old brick walls still held faded graffiti and years of weather, yet the block no longer felt like a place waiting for something terrible to happen. At the corner, the cat shelter glowed orange beneath a security light. A small gray cat sat inside it, dry and unimpressed. Daniel stopped. Rosa followed his gaze. Promise kept, she said. He almost told her that one cat shelter was not the promise. Then he realized she knew. The promise had never really been about cats. Or Mason. Or even Victor Kane. It had been about what kind of man Daniel would become once no one stronger was left to blame for his choices. 3 years earlier, Eli had died believing Daniel might someday find the courage to stop serving fear. For a long time, Daniel thought courage meant standing in front of a gun without flinching. Now he knew better. Sometimes courage was walking into a police station and telling the truth when silence would protect you. Sometimes it was letting a furious woman tell you exactly how you had failed her family and not leaving the room. Sometimes it was choosing not to hurt a man you hated. Sometimes it was sitting at a laundromat folding table while an 8-year-old asked impossible questions. Daniel put his hands in the pockets of his clean black coat. Above the laundromat, a window opened. Noah leaned out. "Mr. Black Coat." Daniel looked up. "What? You forgot your picture." A moment later, Noah disappeared and came running down the interior stairs. He pushed open the back door carrying the old photograph in a clear protective sleeve. Daniel frowned. "That's yours." "I know." "Then why are you giving it to me?" Noah held it out. "I made a copy for my room. Aunt Rosa says old pictures get ruined if you touch them too much. You should keep the real one because you're in it too." Daniel stared at the photograph. The paper was worn at the edges, though the sleeve protected it now. Eli's grin had not changed. Daniel's younger face was partly turned away, already practicing the distance that would define too much of his life. He accepted it carefully. "You sure?" "Yeah." Noah looked at him with those same dark eyes. "Eli wanted you to bring it back." "You did. Now you can have it again." Daniel could not speak for a second. Rosa pretended to be interested in locking the door. Noah slipped his hands into the pockets of his hoodie. "Also, I don't need it to remember him." Daniel looked at the child. "No?" Noah shook his head. "He's everywhere." He pointed to the laundromat. "Aunt Rosa yells like him. Mr. Singh tells his jokes. You make his annoyed face. And I have his bike in the basement." Daniel laughed through the ache in his throat. "That bike is terrible." "You fixed it." Repeatedly. Noah grinned. For a moment, the resemblance was so strong Daniel had to look away. When he looked back, Noah was still there. Not Eli. No replacement. No debt. No ghost Daniel had to preserve perfectly. A living child with his own future. That mattered. Daniel slipped the photograph inside his coat. "Go upstairs. It's late." Noah rolled his eyes. "You're not my dad." "Thank God. You'd bankrupt me in donuts. You have a lot of money. Go." Noah laughed and ran back inside. Rosa waited until the door shut. "He loves you." Daniel looked down the alley. "He's a kid. Children are allowed to love people. Even complicated ones." Daniel exhaled. "I'm still working on the complicated part." "Good. Means you're paying attention." They walked toward the street. At the corner, Daniel glanced back one last time. Marlowe Laundry's sign buzzed above the sidewalk. The letter W was still dimmer than the rest. Steam fogged the front windows. Upstairs, Noah's bedroom light came on. The scene was ordinary. That was exactly what Daniel had come to value most. The first time he stepped through that back door, he had been Harbor Point's new boss, wearing another man's blood and carrying a dead boy's photograph like proof that revenge had finally balanced something. He had expected to leave the picture and disappear. Instead, a child had looked at him and asked why he had it. Then asked whether he was going to keep the bad guys away. The questions had sounded simple. They had changed his life. Daniel touched the photograph through his coat. The old instinct in him still understood power as the ability to make people step aside. But Harbor Point had taught him another definition. Power could also mean making sure a shopkeeper did not have to step aside. Making sure a child did not learn to identify danger by the sound of a car slowing outside. Making sure fear did not become an inheritance passed from one generation to the next. He could not give Eli his life back. He could not erase the alley, the rain, or the years Daniel spent serving the system that killed him. But he could decide what happened next. And on a quiet block in an old neighborhood, Beneath repaired streetlights and above pavement that no longer carried blood toward a storm drain, that decision had finally become something larger than revenge. Daniel Cross walked home through Harbor Point without anyone lowering their eyes. For the first time in his life, that felt like victory.